New discoveries are constantly being made that fundamentally change the way we look at the events and culture of our past. Only in the last few years, many archaeological finds have forced us to take a fresh look at seemingly studied moments in history. In this video, you will see the finds that cast doubt on the official history. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Grave with a full set of weapons. Norwegian archaeologists, while carrying out fieldwork in the central part of the country, unearthed a grave of about 1,100 years old, in which a Viking warrior rested, buried with all his weapons. Researchers write that a man who died around 800–900 AD is buried in the grave. His burial was found near the historic village, which today bears the name of Viniera. It is located south of Trøndelag County. The man was buried with a full set of weapons: an axe, a spear, a shield, and a sword. This says a lot about the status of the buried. First, as archaeologists have established, this man was a free man and a farmer. Second, he was a warrior. During the Viking and early Middle Ages, most warriors were free people who had their own farms. It is the sword that makes this grave special. It's not even about its good preservation. The sword was laid on the left side, although earlier in similar burials, swords were always found on the right side of the deceased. This led scientists to the idea that the warrior was left-handed. Although in this regard, the burial practice of the Vikings looks a little strange. It would seem that for a right-handed person, it is more convenient to lay the sword to the left, so that the warrior can freely grab it with his right hand. However, these weapons were always stowed to the right. In this case, the ritual was broken. By the way, the grave of the alleged left-handed warrior partially overlapped the graves of 3 other warriors buried in the ditch. It surrounded one of the large mounds. These people obviously did not enjoy great honor and respect. In addition, in ancient times, burials were often used several times. In the same ring ditch, archaeologists discovered a 4th grave, which surprised them. Probably a woman was buried there who was cremated either at an early stage of the Viking Age or before it. Funerary gifts were found in this burial: a well-preserved bead, a noble brooch, and scissors. It was from these artifacts that the sex of the buried person was determined. Ring of Senician. Senician's ring was found in Britain in the late 1700s. It is very large, weighs 12 grams, has a peculiar design and an inscription in Latin: Senician, live in peace with God. A few decades later, an ancient clay tablet was found that was related to the ring. The inscription on it was made by a certain Roman named Silvian, who complained to the god Nodens that his ring had been stolen by Senician. The tablet said, "He who bears the name of Senician will not have a single grain of health until he returns the ring to the temple of Nodens." To many, these details will sound familiar. Oxford University professor and aspiring author John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was intimately familiar with the story of the cursed ring and used it in his novel The Lord of the Rings. Ancient mummies in the mine. In Chile, while working to expand the copper mine, workers came across 4 mummies that are likely to be over 2,000 years old. The remains of 4 mummified people dressed in bright colors have been found in the Quebrada Blanca copper mine in northern Chile. These people were buried in official graves, that is, a certain ritual was observed during their burial. The mummies are reported to be very well preserved, which was probably facilitated by the arid climate. People were buried wearing exquisite turban-like headdresses and sandals. Now scientists are analyzing to determine the exact age of the finds. By indirect evidence, they have already established that the mummies may belong to the early period of the formation of Mesoamerica, which lasted approximately between 1100 and 400 BC. As a result of soil salinity, lack of rainfall, and relatively low humidity, the remains were mummified in full gear along with a number of tools indicating the lifestyle of these people. By the way, scientists will now keep a close eye on the mine as it is planned to be used for almost 30 more years. This means that it will continue to expand, therefore, workers may stumble upon other burials and artifacts. Maori whip. Captain James Reddy Clandon was one of the first European settlers in New Zealand. He promoted dialogue between the indigenous Maori people and the European colonialists, was the chairman of the first Bank of New Zealand and the first US consul in the country. The Clandon House Museum contains many items and artifacts, many of which once belonged to the Maori tribe. Apparently, the thief who once climbed into the museum did not know that all Maori artifacts bring a curse to those who mistreat them. He stole a Maori whip with a handle made from whalebone. The stolen thing returned to the museum a month later. It was personally handed over by a friend of the thief, saying that before that, the gates to hell had opened. All misfortunes fell upon him. The thief was never charged, given that the whip returned and the thief had already been punished by some higher court. Mammoth tusk carving technology. Siberian archaeologists have studied figurines carved from mammoth ivory and managed to reconstruct the technology used by ancient people to create items about 20,000 years ago. Archaeologists from the Siberian Federal University and Novosibirsk State University, Russia, during excavations discovered unique beads and other jewelry made from mammoth tusk. Thanks to the technologies used, the figurines have a unique character of fulfillment. However, scientists managed to reconstruct this technology in detail. Scientists have discovered unique jewelry in the Kizhamsky district of the Krasnoyarsk territory at the mouth of the Kova River. Siberian archaeologists have been conducting research here for several decades. In addition to beads, scientists managed to find tools and other ancient things in this place. The world's first thread. Somewhere in the era of the Upper Paleolithic in the territory of today's Western Georgia, a man invented a thread. It would seem an ordinary invention, but it changed a lot, allowing our ancestors to weave and mend clothes, create shoes, and surround themselves with simple interior items. In general, one more step into modern civilization which humanity has made on the territory of our country. Before this find, a Nadal find found in the Czech Republic was considered the oldest thread from the Imereti region. But the Georgian linen thread, discovered in 2007, is almost 5,000 years older. Holy Grail of the Nazis. In 2001, a Bavarian diver found a pot made of 10.5 kilograms of gold at the bottom of the local lake Chiemsee, 70 kilometers east of Munich. The artifact had value in itself, but the researchers were confused by the coinage made in the style of Celtic counterparts 2,000 years ago. In particular, scientists were well aware of the so-called Gundestrup pot discovered in 1891 in the Danish peat box, a superbly preserved silver vessel with rich Celtic decoration. It has been dated to the first millennium BC. However, after the examination, it was found that the pot from Chiemsee was made relatively recently, most likely in the 1930s. Further, it turned out that a certain Alfred Knott, a jeweler of the Munich company Theodor Haydn, told in the 1960s before his death that in the early 1930s he made a certain golden pot, weighing about 10 kilograms by order of Albert Pitch, a major industrialist and director of the Elektrochemische Werke Munich. Pitch, a staunch Nazi and a supporter of Hitler, eventually received the high title of Wehrwirtschaftsführer, leader of the war economy, which was given to the heads of the most important enterprises of the Third Reich. Apparently, it was he who ordered the discovery in Lake Chiemsee. It is not clear how it ended up at the bottom of the reservoir, but it is known that on the shores of the lake it was planned to build a monumental complex of the highest school of the NSDAP, the main and most elite Nazi university, which was to become the leading educational and scientific center of the entire Third Reich. It is possible that the pot, made in the image and likeness of the ancient Celtic vessels, could be intended for this organization. The Nazis knew a lot about this kind of artifacts with a semi-esoteric function. One of the main mysteries of Jerusalem. In Israel, archaeologists during excavations in Jerusalem discovered unique seals about 2,500 years old. The decoding of the symbols printed on them showed that the city of David was not abandoned by the inhabitants after the Babylonian conquest. One of the black spots in the history of Jerusalem is the period of the so-called Babylonian conquest or Babylonian captivity. It is mentioned in the Bible. It is known that the city of David was destroyed by the Babylonian army in 586 BC. However, practically nothing is known about what happened in the city in subsequent years. One popular hypothesis is that the surviving townspeople fled and settled elsewhere. Seals found in Jerusalem indicate that bureaucracy flourished in Jerusalem during this little studied period of time, and this means that the city continued to live and gradually recovered. Rare artifacts have been discovered during excavations near the walls of the old city. Previously, only 10 such artifacts were found in all of Israel, dating from the Persian period, circa 536 BC, 333 BC. The seals were made from clay. One of them apparently was official, and the second was made in a handicraft way. Perhaps it was a fake seal or a seal made by an illiterate official who stood at the lowest hierarchical level. According to archaeologists, the artifacts indicate that there were several levels of bureaucracy in the resurgent Jerusalem. The Bible also talks about the bureaucracy that existed in Jerusalem during this period of time. Treasure with coins over 1,000 years old. During archaeological excavations in Israel, teenage volunteers found a clay vessel with 425 gold coins buried about 1.1 thousand years ago. According to the publication, most of the coins date from the period of early Islam, when the region was part of the Abbasid Caliphate. The coins are made of 24-karat gold and weight 845 grams. At that time, these coins could buy a luxurious house in one of the cities of the Caliphate. The man who buried this treasure 1,100 years ago must have wanted to come back for it, even securing the vessel with a nail to keep it from moving. Finding such a large cache of gold coins is extremely rare, they say, as the gold was often melted down and reused in later cultures. Burial with round graves. In Osaka, in preparation for the construction of a new railway station, a burial with round graves was discovered, in which 350 people were buried. The place where the excavations are being carried out is called Umira's tomb. This is one of the 7 burials in Osaka known to scientists. In addition to round graves, archaeologists have found vertical burials, which contain the remains of several people. Scientists believe that people who died as a result of illness could be buried in common graves. The burial dates from the end of the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868. Also, bones of piglets and horses were found at the site of the burial ground. A cat bone was found in one of the human burials. Now all human remains are sorted and analyzed. After that, they will be reburied in a new place. Remains of an ancient man. Georgia is the birthplace of the European. Yes, dear Germans, Italians, and French, you heard me right. You all come from Georgia. In the 90s of the last century, a real sensation was found on the territory of this country. Female and male bones whose age was about 1.8 million years. Scientists dubbed the found Zezva anemzia, gave the new species the name Homo georgicus, Georgian men, and proved that these are the oldest representatives of the Homo genus after those found in Africa. This allows us to authoritatively state that European civilization originates precisely in Georgia. Detailed description of the made-up artifact. To this day, not only images of the appearance of Vedras have survived, but also descriptions of their work. According to Indian myth, the Vedra was an ideal weapon. It always hit the target, but it was as strong as a diamond and never broke. But how could a fictional artifact ever break if it is completely fictional? We are talking about lightning here. Why even invent an object to shoot with if the gods could directly command them? Again, the logical failure of the official versions of history. After all, it doesn't make any sense. Descriptions of the characteristics of the Vedra about strength and accuracy give reason to think, but was it not a real object? It has two earthly and ordinary characteristics for divine attributes. And from the descriptions of the Vedra, we can conclude that although it did not break, it was possible to hit it, and since it did not miss enemies, it could shoot at non-enemies as well. That is, the descriptions of the divine artifacts are more suitable for a real-life object than a simple fiction. In my opinion, the official versions of history now have so many logical failures that it is easier to believe in the Indian Mahabharata than in them. And to learn more about the ancient finds of archaeologists, I recommend that you subscribe to our channel and click on the bell. Thanks for your views, bye everyone!